I wanted to talk today to begin the discussion. It is certainly not going to be I don't think it's going to be a one-time session. I think we're going to have to spend 2, if not 3 sessions on birth control because there is so much to talk about. There is so much to talk about from a halachic perspective, from a medical perspective. There is it's a very rich topic, and it's an extremely relevant topic, extremely relevant. So, as hakdama, let's take a look at this tshuva, and I think that for this shiur, for these shiurim, I think it's important to read things inside. Maybe in previous shiurim we haven't read everything so inside. Maybe yes, maybe not. But I think just since it's such a relevant topic, and it's something which Rabbanim are asked and are consulted with on such a regular basis, it's kedai that we have a real clarity in the sugya, and especially even with the language that's used in the poskim. So Rav Moshe writes in Even Ezer Chelik Aleph, Siman Samach Daled, he's discussing birth control. Ulemaisa kim shemizdamed she'ela kazu. Ani choker v'doresh harbe. When I get these shilas of birth control, I'm choker v'doresh harbe. Im yesh laha isha sakana b'zeh. Is there a real sakana for her if she would get pregnant? V'rakim habal v'haisha him yirei Hashem v'tznuim b'ma'asehem. They're both a couple that are yirei Hashem, tznuim b'ma'asehem, so they conduct themselves properly. Shelo yakilu heim atzmam yoser meharoi. They're not looking for coolers. They're not looking for the easy way out. And I also want to make sure that it's the type of couple that I can give them a kula, and I can be rest assured that they're not going to go start spreading it around, posting it on social media, making it known to the public what the nature of the kula was. Because all you need is one Rav who's makel for one couple, and then all of a sudden they talk to their friends, they inform their friends that this Rav gave me this heter, and then before you know it, you have a whole generation of people being makel. What's the heter? Oh, because this Rav paskin for that couple, he said you could do it, so I'm probably the same. So Rav Moshe was very careful when he was discussing birth control with people. He would make sure that they were upstanding people, fine people, yirei Hashem, tznuim b'maisim, and wouldn't go ahead and spread the secret. It wasn't because Rav Moshe was nervous that he didn't give an emes psak, that it wasn't a real psak, and he didn't want it to get out for his name to be tarnished, chas v'shalom, but he didn't want it to be a michshol for other people. V'gam rak al zman katzar, and furthermore, the heter that he gave on birth control was a small window of time, although that is subjective, ambiguous, and cryptic. Zman katzar. What is that? Is that a month? Is that 2 months? Is that 3 months? That there's when the window is up, when the heter expires, quote unquote. So I'll be dorish v'choker again. And I'll go back and I'll reiterate the fact that this is no simple or light matter. And therefore, since this window of people, or the pocket of people who are Yirei Hashem, Tznuim b'maisav, they're quiet, they're not going to speak about their heterim, and it's really a legitimate sakana. So Rav Moshe writes, when you boil it down, actually few people are the ones who are the beneficiaries of the heter from Rav Moshe. And this is how every Rav Muvhak should go about and conduct this shaila. V'stam rabbanim chas v'sholem lahem lahoyros be'inyan chomer zeh. And stam rabbanim to get involved in shailas of birth control, chas v'sholem. This is a pretty, this is a pretty serious tshuva that Rav Moshe wrote. And for those of you who are not familiar with the tshuva, it might come as slightly shocking. I think for the most part, many rabbanim, we'll call them stam rabbanim. No one from the top tier, from the Moetzes Gedolei Torah, they're not the only ones who are getting shilas of birth control. I can tell you as a chassan rebbe, when I was, I'm young to begin with, but when I was even much younger, stam chassan rebbe, very common, the chassan would come to chassan classes and he would want to discuss it. And it was very common that rabbanim, young rabbanim, stam rabbanim, the way Rav Moshe puts it, were being osek in these shilas of birth control. So I'll share with you one idea that my Rebbe Soloveitchik once told me. He told me that he believes the attitude, the very intense and serious attitude that Rav Moshe and his contemporaries put on the sugya of birth control is because historically, when were they writing? Historically, they were writing after the Holocaust, the generation after the Holocaust. And the thought of limiting family size, the thought of family planning was so antithetical and was such a horrific notion when the avodah was to build Klal Yisrael. So really the people who would be eligible for the heter were far and few. And nowadays we are, Baruch Hashem, a few years later with a different set of circumstances, mitzad the population, mitzad mental health, mitzad just what goes on in the world between husband and wife and families, and unfortunately the some of the dysfunctionality that exists in our society. So perhaps the modern day approach isn't a stira, it's not a contradiction or a dismissal of Rav Moshe's approach, but it's for a different time and a different place, and therefore we have to go into the sugya with this tshuva, knowing that what we're dealing with is a shaila chamura and is a serious endeavor. Nevertheless, it's also important for rabbanim, even the way Rav Moshe calls it, stam rabbanim, to be able to service their kehilas and to be able to help their couples, either by saying yes and giving the heter, and we'll talk about when to give the heter and how and what type of birth control, and maybe sometimes even to say no, to be able to look at a couple and say, I understand that you're asking for heter for birth control, but I don't think it's right for you. I don't think that's the best idea. I don't think it's justified. So with that hakdama, we will begin. Any questions before we begin? Okay. So here are, at least the way I can think of it, two potential isurim or two potential halachic considerations when dealing with birth control. What could be the issue? So we have a mitzvah of puruvu. Puruvu miluas aretz kipshua. We have a mitzvah daraisa to procreate. So we have a mitzvah to have children. Taking birth control would be a bittul of puruvu. It would be a bittul of puruvu. We would be doing something which would proactively prevent children and would be proactively enabling us to be mavatal the mitzvah of puruvu. That's one consideration. Another consideration, based on the type of birth control, we could encroach on shilas of shichvas zera levatala. So I think that number one, in determining whether or not there's a heter, and in determining which form of birth control is the most appropriate for this couple, we have to keep these in mind. We have to keep in mind the fact that there's a mitzvah of puruvu, and we have to keep in mind there's an isser of shichvas zera levatala. Can anyone think of any other consideration why birth control would be usher or problematic? All right.
Well, perhaps you could suggest that even if you were Yotze Peru, there's still a set of Yitzhara, or Barav Tanach Yadecha. So even if you're already Peru, that could matter.
Right, 100%. What Rabbi Hachman was pointing out correctly, that even after you've satisfied and fulfilled your basic mitzvah of puruvu, of let's say a boy and a girl, we still have, whether we call it an obligation or an expectation or an achrayis of la'erv al tanach yadecha, and to continue having children to the best of a person's ability.
We know that the Rebbe was very, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was extremely in having as many children as possible.
Because of
that's the Avodah of the Yid, to bring the Yiddish kind into the world, and
right.
to have more, as much as they able to give you. It's a bracha.
Right.
Every kid is a bracha.
100%. I don't think anyone would disagree. The question is, what do you do when that beautiful message of bringing children into the world, bringing another neshama into the world, populating the world with Yidden, referencing the Gemara Nida, Daf Yud Gimel, that Ein Ben David Ba, Ad Shehotzia Kol Neshamas Shebeguf, that Mashiach is not going to come until we take all the neshamas out of that chamber called Guf. So every time we bring another neshama into the world, we're hopefully bringing us one step closer to Mashiach. So they're all, I don't think anyone would argue, anyone in their right mind would argue that it's that having children is a chisarn. The shaila is, what do we do when we are faced with tension and faced with a predicament where every time if another child would be born, another child would be born, or a child would be born now, it would conflict with mental health. It would conflict with the mother, the father, or the siblings' well-being, the stability in the home. How would we balance that? So that I think is a serious shaila, and I think that's really the crux of the sugya.
Most people, what the Rebbe would scream about is the money. Most people is about money. It's about the money. How are we going to support the child? And the Rebbe was very much into, the Eibush to support the child. If from a Yid, the Eibush is the one who gives you, the Eibush can give you a child, he can give you to support the child. I'm not talking about mental health, and I agree with you on that point, but inside most people come because they're afraid of the money. They're how blah, 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 and all these kind of things. It's all about money. Right. At least people that come to me, it's about money.
There's definitely, so part of this year, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to analyze. There's different parts of the sugya. That's why it's not a short sugya. That's why it's not a short sugya at all. But we're going to have to analyze what are the various forms of birth control and what are the potential halachic oppositions to each one. What would be the identifying reason as to why, the compelling reason why we would permit birth control? And does the reason justify the actual fact of the actual contraception? That we know the Gemara in Yavamis and Daf Yud Beis, I think I have this source later, but talks about Gimel Nashim Mishamshos B'moich. Gimel Nashim Mishamshos B'moich. And we're going to have to discuss that Gemara. But the Gemara says that there are 3 women who are allowed to be Mishamish B'moich, are allowed to have relations with a form of birth control. We're going to have to discuss what is Moich. And once we understand the sugya, when the Gemara was mattering Moich and actually telling us as machlokes whether it's a heter, Gimel Nashim, it's mutter for them to be Mishtamish B'moich, or maybe Gimel Nashim with those 3 women, it's an obligation for them to be Mishtamish B'moich because of the sakana. So we're going to have to see, even if we don't have the contemporary cases or not the exact same cases of those Gimel Nashim, but if halachically the level of sakana that the Mishnah was referring to is equivalent to what we're dealing with, so then depending on certain Rishonim, either it's a heter or a chiyuv, and that's all part of the sugya. That's all part of the sugya to try to figure out what the, when we can be mater, when we absolutely should not be mater, and what's in the middle. And sometimes the Rav can have a lot of influence to try to give the couple support. I'll just share with you one personal maisa. One personal maisa. When I say personal, sometimes the personal maisim are stories that happened to me as the Rav, and this personal maisa is a story that happened to me as the Shoel. I remember when I got engaged. So I first got engaged, and I had heard something about birth control. So I figured, yeah, okay, everyone will have, we go on birth control. That's what you do. I remember sitting, making an appointment with my Rebbe Soloveitchik, and I sat down with him, and I told him, okay, I heard about this thing called birth control. And I was told we need a heter, so I'm here for a heter. So he said, why do you, what is it? What's the heter for? What do you need it for? So I was telling him, I don't know, getting married, it's a big step and this and that. I was nervous about all these things. And he looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you doing? And he spoke to me and he gave me support and chizuk. And I walked out of there. Not only did he give me so much support, I walked out of there like I was embarrassed. How could I have even sat down and asked him the shaila? What was I thinking? What in the world was I thinking to even ask the shaila? But I think what I experienced there is not uncommon. I think that a lot of people go into marriage with a certain assumption that got to go with birth control. And the role of the Rav is to take that assumption and to show the balabas, to show the person who's asking why the assumptions are not necessarily so accurate, and to address their fears and to address their concerns and give them chizuk that they could do it even without birth control. And Baruch Hashem, I was very happy. We didn't go on birth control. Baruch Hashem, our daughter was born shortly after the wedding. Baruch Hashem. So, I'll never forget that feeling of like, of course I have to go on birth control, but a lot of people feel that way. And the role of the Rav is to be able to address those concerns from a halachic, from a hashkafic, and also from a chizuk point of view, to encourage them to say, listen, you don't need it. You may think you need it, but there's really ways to get around it, and don't worry about it. Now, what Rabbi Bukit is referring to, a very common shaila, you have a college boy, college girl, they haven't started their careers yet, they're in school, and after they finish school, they're going to have to become interns, and then after interns, they'll start making a few bucks. His parents don't have so much money, her parents don't have so much money, and they come and they say, what are we supposed to do? We're still in school, we're being supported, we're barely being supported by our parents, but there's no wiggle room. They don't have more to pay for childcare, etc. We don't have jobs, we don't have any income, so we want to go on birth control. And it's a serious shaila. It's a serious shaila because on the one hand, can you be matir just because of financial reasons? On the other hand, you don't want to be responsible. A Rav never wants to be responsible for a balabas having a nervous breakdown because they really can't succeed in the world, because they really can't function because they're so nervous of where my next dollar is going to come from. We could shmooze from Emunah from today until tomorrow, but Lamaisa, if they're so broken, they really don't know where they're going to pay for the babysitter, the cleaning help, the diapers, the wipes, formula, Rahman al-Islam. People are really going through a crazy thing now. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on now with the formula. So serious shilas, and Be'ezus Hashem, we will get to these shilas. Let us go one by one. Try to first we'll cover the medical topic. We'll cover the general sugya of what types of birth control is actually on the market, what's available for people, what are the options that people are asking for, and then we can discuss the halachic approach to each one, and then we'll come out with some klalim lahalacha and some halacha l'maisa. Again, I don't know if we'll be able to conquer this all today, but Mitzvah Shem will start. So the most common form of birth control is the pill. Okay? Now this is called the combination pill. Why is it called a combination pill, Rabbi say? No. We've been in this course for how many months? What's the combination pill? What's the combination of?
I'm not good in English terminology. Estrogen.
Okay. So the combination pill is a combination of
estrogen,
two
progesterone.
Hormones. Say it again.
Progesterone.
Progesterone and
estrogen. And
estrogen. So there's two hormones, progesterone and estrogen. So it's important because there's another pill, which is not a combination. It's just one. Okay. So the most common pill, when we talk about women who are going on birth control pills, so it is a combination pill of progesterone and estrogen. Now, progesterone and estrogen have very different roles in the cycle, in a woman's cycle. Estrogen is mostly the hormone which is used before ovulation. Estrogen is the hormone which is involved in the beginning of the cycle, okay, where it helps the woman, where the brain is giving messages to the ovaries to start producing and maturing the follicles and eventually getting towards ovulation. After ovulation takes place, then if you look over here in this chart, the bottom line, progesterone is actually pretty standard. It's pretty stationary, and it only starts to increase when ovulation takes place. Once ovulation takes place, the egg is ovulated out of the ovary. At that point, the progesterone starts to rise. What's the idea? What's the lumdus behind that? Because the progesterone, estrogen is really more imperative in the beginning of the cycle and in getting the ovulation to take place. Progesterone, the role of progesterone is to thicken the uterine lining. When we want, after the ovulation takes place, and we anticipate the embryo fertilizing and then eventually going to the uterus, we want to make sure that uterus is healthy. We want to make sure that the environment is a conducive environment for the fertilized egg to hatch onto, to cleave onto, and then eventually begin forming as a fetus. So the progesterone is what is really more associated with the uterus, and the estrogen is more associated with the ovulation, okay? Now, the combined pills, by keeping your estrogen and progesterone up, so you are playing with your ovulation, you're kind of manipulating ovulation, and you're manipulating the uterine growth. So when a woman is on the combined pill, very often what's happening is that they are tricking their body, they're raising their hormone levels, they're tricking their body to think that either they're pregnant or they're not ovulating. So therefore, a woman is not going to get pregnant if she's on her combined pill because of the manipulation of estrogen and progesterone. Okay? That's the way it works. If we had to find a Talmudic source that would address the pill. Again, obviously they didn't have the combined pill. They didn't have a pill which was estrogen and progesterone. But if we had to find the Talmudic source to try and explain the concept of the pill, where would we turn? So let's take a look at a few Gemaras. The first Gemara is the Gemara Yavamis. The Gemara Yavamis Samachayim Beis. Oh, the truth is, the Daf Yomi already got here, right? Where's the Daf Yomi holding? No Daf Yomi, Nix?
We're an ayin now. We're an ayin.
Okay, so this is Chazara. Yehuda v'Chizkiya Tumim Hayu. Echad nigmar tzuras l'sayf tisha. Ve'echad nigmar tzuras l'tfilas shiva. Okay, so this woman. Just 1 second, please. Yehuda and Chizkiya, these twins, presented a very difficult pregnancy for the mother. Yehuda's the Bisud Reb Chiya's children. By the way, what is this Gemara saying? Rabbi say this Gemara says that there were twins. One was born at 9 months and one was born at 7 months, right?
Yeah, this Gemara is indicating that there's two different types of pregnancy, a 7-month pregnancy and a 9-month pregnancy.
At the same time.
Correct. And that
How
there's
do you
two different
understand that?
Mitzias, two different pregnancies.
So how can you understand them? But Mitzias, how do we understand such a thing? Has anyone ever heard of twins being twins in the same sack being born 2 months apart? I think the pshat is, Rabbi Isai, I think the pshat is that it's possible, and I've seen this with my own cases here at Pua, that it is possible for a woman to have 2 uteruses. It is possible for a woman to have 2 uteruses and 2 vaginas. And I think, I don't know if I looked this up, but I remember when I was learning Nida, so I wanted to say the pshat was that this woman, Yehuda v'Chizkiya's mother, Yehuda's the Bisud Reb Chiya, so she actually had 2 uteruses. It wasn't the pshat that she had 1 uterus and then she had twins and one of the babies was born she conceived 2 months later, meaning she got pregnant and then 2 months later she conceived another baby, right? Or that one baby was delivered and she kept the other baby healthy for another 2 months. I'm saying, I don't think that that's in line with science, that a woman could give birth to a healthy baby and then give birth to another
Is
healthy
it possible?
baby.
Is it possible? Nigma Tsurasa means that the baby formed. I'm not a doctor. The baby formed later, because the Gemara says, "I'm not having a Gemara in front of me." Nigma Tsurasa, the slave Tisha. Is that possible that a baby develops slow? One was developed earlier. One was developed later.
Yeah, but
No, but this
again,
Gemara
yeah.
seems to be indicating that there's two different natures of pregnancy. The Gemara Hashkas is not talking about two uteruses. It's talking about there's two different amounts of time that a baby grows within the mother. Like there's two different types. There's a 7-month pregnancy, which is one thing, and a 9-month pregnancy, which is something else. That's the
but the Gemara calls them Te'umim, which means they're twins, which means that they were in the womb simultaneously.
But you could be in the womb simultaneously, and in each one be developed of a different type of pregnancy.
So okay, that's one
seems to be
mahalach.
saying.
But has a person ever seen that? Have you ever heard of a woman giving birth and then giving birth 2 months later to the second baby?
No, they were both born at the same time. One was already finished 2 months ago.
They were saying they were both born. They were both preemies.
They were both born at the same time, the 9th month. One was already finished 2 months ago. Not possible.
You could say that.
That's not what the Gemara said. That's not shot in the Gemara.
And l'chara, I mean, l'maisa, I just want to tell you, there are cases of a woman that has 2 uteruses, and women who have 2 uteruses very often have 2 vaginas. I'll tell you a psak, halacha l'maisa. There was a woman, I got a call from a dayan in Borough Park. There was a woman who was experiencing very painful bleeding and bedikas and everything like that right after she got married. A few months into her marriage, she ended up going to a doctor, and the doctor identified 2 uteruses and 2 vaginas on this woman. And listen to this psak. The dayan in Borough Park paskind that she was a nida. Why? From her chasana. Why? Because he said if she has 2 vaginas, that means she needs bedikas in both. And since she didn't know that she had 2, and she only did bedikas in one, he called her a nida from Altkala. She hadn't even been, even though she went to the mikvah, since she didn't do bedikas in both of the nikavim, therefore she was still had the din of a nida akala before the chuppah, and therefore she needed to do bedikas in both, and lemaisa, whatever, it was a big tolot. Lemaisa, she had to have a surgery to close up one of the holes and to take out the second uterus. And there was a shaila: is there an isser of serous of a hysterectomy? Generally, we don't matter hysterectomies, but you're allowed to take out one. Is that called a serous, a maisiv serous of taking out a hysterectomy, taking out the uterus if she has another one? So you're really enabling her to have a healthy pregnancy because you're removing that second one, which was the issue. The other amazing shaila that comes up with such a woman, we're not going to discuss it now. What would the din be regarding pidyon haben? If a woman had all of her children in one uterus, 5, 6, 7 children in one uterus, and then the 8th child is a boy, and it's born from that second uterus. It was the Peter Rechem, it was the first child from that second uterus. Would that 8th child have a din of Peter Rechem because it was from that uterus, and he would be required to have a pidyon haben with a bracha, even though it's the 8th child of this family? Pretty amazing shaila. Nope. Anyway, okay. So that was just parenthetical. I just wanted to say maybe the pshat was in this difficult pregnancy that Yehuda's Devisu the Reb Chia had was not just because she had a difficult labor, but it's because, or difficult pregnancies, it's because she had a real anatomical issue called 2 uteruses, which presented a major issue when she got pregnant. So what did she do? What does the Gemara say that she did? The Gemara says Yehuda's Devisu the Reb Chia have leitzar leda. Shanoi mana va'asi l'kamid Reb Chia. She changed her clothing and she came in front of her husband Reb Chia. Amra, she asked the shaila. Now he didn't know that this was her, this was his wife, because she changed her clothing. It's mifkida peri v'rivya. She asked her husband, the Rav, while she was dressing up, is a woman chayeves mufkida peri v'rivya? Amar la loy. So Nachman responded to this woman, who little did he know was his wife. He said, no, a woman is not mechuyeves in peri v'rivya. Azla ashis samad ikrarta. What did she do? She drank the kos shel ikrin, the sama de ikarta, this potion that caused her to become an akara, to become sterile. L'soif igloi milsa amr la echu yalat lichada karsa achrisi. Reb Chia was furious. If I would have known, I never would have been matched this. I wanted more children. He was very upset. But the Gemara tells us that what did she do? All she wanted to know was whether the woman's chayevis and peri v'rivya. If a woman is not chayevis and peri v'rivya as per her husband, so then it would be mutter for her to drink the kos shel ikrin, the sama de karta. And amazingly, if you look in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Hey and Even Ezer, Zok the Shulchan Aruch, Hamashke kos shel ikrin la'adam l'shar b'alechaim k'dei l'sarsai, hareza aser. If you drink the kos, if a man drinks the kos shel ikrin, which will cause him to be sterile, or balechayim, for the sake of sirus, it's aser. They ain't like in alav. The isha muteris lishtais ikrin kidei l'sar sad shalaitei. But an isha is taka muter to drink a kos shel ikrin. Now, this is a very questionable and a difficult psak. Is a woman not obligated in the parsha of sirus? Is sirus isha muter? Are we allowed to? For a woman who doesn't want to have any more children, are we allowed to tie her tubes? Are we allowed to take out her uterus because she doesn't want any more children? Is that a halachically valid form of birth control? Or not? No. According to most Rishonim, sirus isha is an issur d'Rabbanan. According to the Gra, sirus isha is an issur d'Oraisa. So what's going on over here? How do we understand the fact that the Shulchan Aruch paskins isha muteris lishtos ikrin k'dei l'sar sa'ad shalateler? What's the answer, Rabbi say? Anyone want to take a stab at it?
Is it possible to suggest in this case, since she's not chayeves in peri v'rivya, and there's some kind of a medical condition, whether you're correct that she has two uteruses or there's something going on that caused her all this pain, so for medical reasons, and she's not chayeves in peri v'rivya, so therefore it's permissible.
But the Shulchan Aruch doesn't codify that story and explain it because of a medical issue. Gemara per the Shulchan Aruch per the Gemara just codifies the etzem din, that it's mutter for an isha to drink the kos shel ikrin, the ikrin.
In other words, even if there wouldn't be a medical issue, it doesn't seem from
the Shulchan Aruch. If that, it sounds like ikar chaser min hasefer. If the whole heter is predicated on the medical issue, then you'd think that the Shulchan Aruch would point out that the medical issue is the most important, piece of the puzzle.
Oh, so another possibility here is the notion that it's some kind of a grama, and she's not actually like taking a surgery and cutting something out of tying a tube, versus I drank something and that has whatever effect it has.
Oh, very good. So I think the way most poskim understand the heter of kos shel ikrin is because it's not an automatic and immediate type of sirus. It's something that over time, I don't know how much time, but over time, it will be misaris the isha. It will be misaris the man if he were to use it. It will be misaris the behema if the behema were to be fed with it. But it would be grama. Now, sirus b'makom grama for a man or for a behema is aser, right? Even grama should be aser. But a woman, since anyway, she's not mechuyeves in sirus midaraisa. Sirus is only in rabbanon according to most Rishonim, and she's not mechuyeves al peri v'rivya. So it seems like doing this b'makom grama would be permissible. Now, if we had to categorize one of the forms of this form of birth control,
Yes.
Rabbi Siegelman.
We hear you back, Rabbi Hachman. We hear your
I'm sorry.
Rabbi Sigmund, is it
Yes.
pshat is grama, or that's not called cirrus?
It says in the Lashon of Shulchan Aruch, Kidei L'Sarsa. It says Kidei L'Sarsa, and it says for a man or a Baalei Chayim, it would be Aser. So it sounds like it really is Sirus. Right?
So you really need it. Who says who? You said a statement, the Gra, and etc. What do they say that statement that she's prohibited to do sitters? I don't know. You asked the question based on the Gra. I didn't see the Gra.
So you have to trust me on this one because I have a beard.
But does he say? Did he say? Does it a blank statement that yes? I don't know.
Yeah. So when it comes to Sirus Isha, so Sirus is an Issa Deraisa, right? Artzechem lo sasu. That's written by Behema and by and a man. Then there's a Machlokas HaRishonim whether it applies to an Isha also. Most Rishonim say it does not. The Gra and Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch paskins not, Tosfos paskins not. The Gra and Shulchan Aruch writes that it's an Issa Deraisa. But the Gra is really a Das Yachid.
The question on the Gra, not on the Shulchan Aruch, basically. The question is, how did the Gra say it's in Midraisa? That's really the question.
Right. What would the Gra say? I have to look back. What's the Gra's comment? If anyone wants to look at Shulchan Aruch, I don't have a Shulchan Aruch in front of me. But if any Bir Hagra on Simin Hey Sif Yud Beis, if the Gra has any comment on that, that would be interesting. Maybe Taka, that's where he disagrees. Now, the poskim look towards this Gemara as the source and the background of the halachic background to the combination pill, right? Because the combination pill, it's taking a pill, you're ingesting something, you're swallowing something, and for the time being, kol zman that you're swallowing it, you are preventing pregnancy, right? Now, the kos shel ikrin is worse because the kos shel ikrin is permanent, right? Agav the poskim point out that the fact that she asked her husband whether a woman is chayavis in puravu, that that is assuming, and therefore she made the decision to be Messiahs herself based on that, was assuming that there was no takanas Rabbeinu Gershon that said that a husband can't marry a second wife. If a husband could only marry one wife, so the fact that she is not mechuyeves in puravu doesn't take away from the fact that she has to help him be Makayim Puravu, right? But in a makkah when there's no takanas Rabbeinu Gershom and a husband can have two wives, so this wife, my wife Sarah, she may be she drank the kos shel ikrin, but I could take another wife. I could take Rivka, I could take Rachel, and with those wives I could have children. So therefore, I could fulfill my chiyuv of puravu through a different wife, and there would be no isser for my first wife or the one who took the kos shel ikrin to do it because of a bittul puravu, because she's not mechuyeves in puravu.
But the cirrus only applies when there's a mitzvah puravu?
No, cirrus would exist. Well, on a deraisa level, well, according to many Rishonim, it doesn't exist on a deraisa level.
No, by a
generally
man.
assume la halacha, cirrus isha doesn't apply in a deraisa level.
What about by a man?
For sure it applies on a deraisa level, even without puravu.
So maybe
a man has 10 children. He says, I don't want any more kids. He's still not allowed to get a vasectomy.
Of course not. So maybe Reb Chaya was Makayim Puravu.
Even if it doesn't make a difference. If he was, then fine. If he wasn't, he could just marry another wife. This
No,
was
but he
before
doesn't need
Rabbeinu
to.
Gershom. Right? Yeah? Okay. So Rabbi Yashiv says in Krevich Chuvas, Rabbi Yashiv says, "Mikol makom yesh ladon shebeim mibchina refuit he yachol lakachas kadorim ha'asum limnoi heroin yesh makom lahati lo lishtamish b'hem." Says Rabbi Yashiv, if there's a medical reason, a medical necessity for her to take these pills, to her to go on birth control, it's mutter for her to take the pills. That just like it was mutter for her to take the kos shel ikrin, it's mutter for this woman to take the pill. Achein, so she'll become basically a temporary akara, just like the kosher liquid, which is actually a permanent akara. Achein me'ela mishtamshin b'kadurim anal yesh echos katan is a small percentage is a gurim etzlam dimum. It can cause spotting. V'rotzu efo shebapam rishon v'shniya tibdok atzma lefnei tashmish v'achari tashmish v'im loy timtze shum davar yachol lahamshach v'shtamish b'loy b'dika. Rabbi Yashiv just brings up a side issue, a side issue of the spotting that takes place. So within the usage of pills, you have to be careful that that you don't have any abnormal bleeding, which would cause nidus issues or royada machmas tashmish issues. So he says you have to be careful of that. But in terms of the etzem usage, the actual usage and permissibility of the pills, we have a model in Chazal, Yivom Samachay of the Koshel Ikrid. On this, on the pills, on the spotting and the other issue, the pill, Ramosha also has a few chuvas where he talks about the pills, and he writes, "Hine bedavar pilin, shaloitis aber haisha, vade mitzad iser zer levatala leka." So there's no issue of zer levatala when it comes to the pills. Obviously, they're having regular intercourse, having regular tashmish. And if a woman is experiencing difficulty, she can't get pregnant, it would be unhealthy for her to get pregnant. And maybe it's just because she's just too shvach, she just doesn't have the koyach right now to get pregnant. Maybe more than other women. Even if the woman hadn't yet been Makayim Puruvu, but Moshe here writes, although we saw that he took a very, very serious and machmir approach earlier in the Hakdama to this year, but Moshe writes in Chela Gimel Even Ezer that if she's very cholsha, she's schalishus, there's weakness, she's shvach, so there is a heter to be able to allow for the pills because there's no issue of shechva zera, and even if there's no puruvu yet, if he cholsha lachako says as man katzar disguise like gufa, if it's a temporary pause on her puruvu experience until she gets a little bit more, has a little bit more chizuk haguf, that's fine. The kol shekain Rav Moshe says kishakiyim puruvu yesh lahati lechakos gam ad shalosh shanim ad shetischazik. Let's say she has a baby, she needs to wait something like 3 years. Now again, I said at the beginning of this year when we quoted Rav Moshe said zman katzar. So I pointed out zman katzar is something which is in the eyes of the beholder, who knows what Zman Katzar is? What Zman Katzar for me might be very long for you and vice versa. So Moshe writes that a woman can even wait 3 years. V'im hi isha choyla, av sheloi tiskanen mizeh, el tchilo b'yoser, v'staber devekiyim puruvu tuchol levatel ba'ofen zel af legamri. He writes, if the woman is a chola, av sheloi tiskanen mizeh, even if she's not going to become more of a sakana, but she's a chola, she's not feeling well, she doesn't feel well, chronically doesn't feel well. Mistaber the bekim puruvu, if a woman is experiencing difficulty in life and choli in life in general, she can take it. Mistaber the bekim puruvu tuchol levata ba'ofen zeh af legamri. The mishvil mitzvah sheves eina isha mishubedes labayla lehischalois mizeh yoser v'derech stamnosh. But Moshe writes in the case where they were makayim puruvu, and the chiyuv to continue is either mitzad sheves or l'erev al tanich yadecha. There, a woman is not mechuyav to put herself in a makom of choli in order to be makayim these other mitzvahs of sheves or erev tanich yadecha. But you see here a very different approach from Rav Moshe, where under certain circumstances it is permissible to give these women the heter of the pill. Again, there's no issue of shechva zera, and the issue is puruvu, and puruvu would really depend on the nature of the difficulty. Correct? I once heard from Rav Asher Weiss that the following consideration should be made. The mitzvah of puruvu is a mitzvah, it's a mitzvah saseh, right? It's a mitzvah saseh. It's not a mitzvah loy saseh. And we know when it comes to a mitzvah saseh, the din is hayavazvez. No, hayavazvez. Hayavazvez. You're not mechuyev to give up 20% of your estate to be mekayim a mitzvah, right? Says Rav Asher Weiss, if the challenge if the difficulty, if the tircha of this mitzvah saseh is going to exceed what would be a chomish. Okay, we're not talking about money, but the idea of the emotional chomish, the fact that you'd be giving up your whole life. It's like you're giving up more than 20% of your estate. So you'd be giving up your life, your whole day. I think he was specifically talking about in that tshuva. He was talking about giving birth to a baby. If the baby was going to be born with illness. So the unfortunate situation when parents have a child who is disabled and who is handicapped, and the amount of not just money but effort and the care and everything that goes into taking care of these children, seeing to it that they're living the best life, right? It can be extremely overwhelming. So much so that it would be more than what a chomish would be. And if you're not mechuyev to be mevazvez yosef b'chomish, so too in this sugya, you'd not be mechuyev to be mevazvez yosef b'chomish, not just financially but emotionally for a mitzvah saseh. If it was a lav, there's nothing to talk about. You have to give up everything. So if it was an isra of shechem azar levatal, let's say that was the case, and there was a lav, so then that's not what we're talking about. But if it's only a bittul aseh, so the metrics that are given by Chazal that govern a mitzvah, how our attitude towards a mitzvah saseh is that of hayivazvez yosef b'chomish. So it's important for the Rav, together with the couple, to be able to identify and to be mishayer, to quantify what is the nature and the degree of tsa'ar, of emotional distress, whether that would exceed chomish, and then maybe you wouldn't be mechuyev altogether. So this is not what Rav Moshe is saying, this is what Rav Asher says, but it's a similar idea that a woman is not mechuyev to give up, to become a choli for a either sheves or lever tachim necha, or even for puruvu, since it's a mitzvah saseh. And Rav Moshe writes this again. Hine b'davar likach isha glulos l'minis heroin hine av ha'ish she'isr zera levatal leka kivat she'azera nichnas l'rechem ha'isha ava below tzarech gadol gam ze ein likach ki ein lias chachim levakesh ishes. But he does write that as long as there's not going to be any shech vazer levatala, and if there's no real reason, then you shouldn't be mekel. After b'shvil l'sheves bra ein l'chayev ha'isha litztar yosef mikfi kochosea aval hukich mischachim neged ratzon Hashem yisbarach. But a person shouldn't take this out of context, and a person shouldn't think that I can be greater than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wiser than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I know best what's right for my family more than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Im yichal shebegufa. The koshken if he yira ma'od shekorin nervin. If she's very nervous, she has nervin. She's anxious. I think when poskim refer to nervin, I think it's what we would refer to as clinical anxiety. If a woman has nervin, she kamo choli, shehaya shayach lahater. Aval yesh leida shaglulos elo af sheotzim adam hem gormim shetira ha'isha ma'atam sheladina ein chiluk ben harbe dam lamashu. So 2 points in Rav Moshe. Number one, you see that there is a heter from Rav Moshe under certain circumstances when certainly after puruvu and even before puruvu, if a woman is shvach, if a woman just can't do it, she can't physically or maybe even emotionally, he writes, to have another child. Again, this is all subjective, and it's the Rav's achrayus to speak with the couple to try to determine, kakol lefi einei hamoira, whether he believes that this woman would satisfy that category of Rav Moshe. That's insofar as birth control is concerned. And if I read it quickly, but if you look at the very last line, he writes that also these pills cause spotting. And he writes that this little bit of spotting, even if it's a little bit, ein chiluk bein harbe dam lamashu. Rav Moshe has an amazing chiddush when it comes to hilchos nida, that the dam that comes from the pill is not treated like ksamim, it's treated like a period. Because a ksamim, according to Rav Moshe, listen to this, according to Rav Moshe, ksamim is blood that happens spontaneously, blood that comes randomly. But blood that comes as a response from a pill that I took, that's not called ksamim, that's called a period. That's called dam daraisa. And therefore he writes, Ein chiluk ben harbe dam lamashu, even tipas dam kemashu, kachardal, right? We know that would only be a problem if it was daraisa. If it was at mashu, as long as it was less than a kesem, so it would be mutter if it was midrabanan. But Moshe learns that the dam that comes from the staining from a pill does not have a din of ksamim, it's a din of a re'iyah. Therefore, even a little dam would be a problem. Now, most poskim do not go with this. Most poskim do not go with this mahalach. But this was the fact. In fact, the shita of Rav Moshe and some of the Talmidim I know do paskin like it, but many poskim do not. Okay. Any questions? Fine. While we're on the pill, and we'll close with the pill, with this pill, but this is called the POP, the progesterone only pill. So we said the combination pill has progesterone and estrogen. There is a pill that only has progesterone. Now, why would a person take only the POP? Why would a person take the progesterone only pill, and not the combination pill? Two main reasons. Number one, when a woman is nursing and she wants to go on birth control after the baby, so estrogen does not really stem with milk production. Estrogen gets in the way of the milk production. So if a woman wants to nurse and go on birth control, the birth control pills that she's going to take is the POP, progesterone only. That's number one. Number two, there are some women who have certain proclivities to cancer, and the estrogen will raise the risk of the cancer. So women who have the carriers of BRCA or of other cancer-related illnesses, so their doctors often shy away from estrogen, and they will use the POP as a form of birth control. Okay, now, how does it work? So there's different mahalchim, either thickening mucus in the cervix to prevent sperm from entering the womb. Okay, remember the progesterone, the hormone progesterone is again less to do with ovulation, more to do with the uterine lining, the cervix, etc. It changes the uterine lining, making it difficult for the fertilized egg to implant, sometimes stopping the body from releasing an ovum, right? But this varies between men and women between cycles. The estrogen, as we said, is more so related to ovulation. The progesterone is more related to the thickening of the uterus. Very often there is something called egestin. I don't know if you've heard of egestin. It's very often the pill that kalas take before the wedding. So some women, some kalas take full birth control pills, the combined pill. We usually give that to them months in advance because they have to regulate their cycles. Let's say you don't have months in advance. The woman gets engaged, and within a month or so, they're going to get married. They don't have time to start taking birth control and regulating the cycle so that they're not going to be a chuppahs nida. So the pill that they take is the POP, is the progesterone only pill. It's in America we call it egestin, and what it does, the way that it works is that it thickens the uterine lining. So when together with the doctor, we figure out exactly when she would have had a period. And what we do is we start taking the progesterone before the period would come. We take the progesterone only pill because that extra progesterone would keep the level of progesterone up in the body and it would continue the thickening of the uterine lining. And therefore, kozman that there's a thickening of the uterine lining, she's not going to get a period. She's not going to bleed. So that would be another mahalach of birth control. And it's important. You'll see this. I'll share you the slides with you. It's an amazing chart over here that you'll see on the left-hand side. People have side effects from spotting. There are side effects from the birth control, whether it's spotting, acne, with the breakthrough bleeding, it's spotting, depression, moodiness. And here we can explain why that's happening. Sometimes it's because you have too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. Sometimes it's not enough estrogen and too much progesterone. So based on the side effect of the problem, sometimes we can identify, look at the pill and say, oh, wow, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be tweaked. And based on what needs to be tweaked, maybe this pill is better for you versus that pill, right? I'll give you a very, very common example of this, and then we'll close here. A common example is women who are on a certain pill, and then they lose a lot of weight, or they gain a lot of weight. They start dieting, or they start eating more. So since their body changes, their BMI changes, they're gaining weight, they're losing weight. So now, but the thing is, they're fluctuating, their weight is fluctuating, but their pill isn't. The pill is the same pill that the doctor gave to them months before. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that the changes that occur in your body have to be in sync with the dosage of the birth control, the progesterone and the estrogen that you're taking. If there is a discrepancy between the two, you're taking too much estrogen for your weight because you lost weight, you may experience certain side effects. And the way to fix that, to alleviate the issue, which usually comes along with a tremendous amount of frustration, but so to be in communication with your doctor and to be cognizant of the fact that I gained weight, I lost weight, I'm doing this different, I'm exercising more, I'm exercising less. So therefore, it's important for the doctor to know, because he can, if the doctor knows what he's talking about and what he's doing, can tweak the dosage or change the pill to a pill which is more appropriate for the specific situation to alleviate some of the side effects or the problems. Anyway, that's the sugya of pills. And again, to review, the pill, according to many poskim, can be a very good option because we have a somewhat of a model, a similar model or precedent in Chazal, which is the Gemara Yavamas on Daf Samachay. We also have a psak in Shulchan Aruch in Siman Hey that allows for the kosher likrin. This is even better than the kosher likrin because it's not permanent; it's only temporary, right? But we have to be cognizant of two things. We have to be cognizant of the fact that we're postponing pruvu potentially, and therefore that needs to be justified. And it's also good that there's no shayla of shich mazera because tashmish is done kederech kol haaretz. There's no barrier, there's no condom, there's no any the other types of contraception that we'll talk about, like the spermicide or the what do we call it? Losing my mind over here. The diaphragm. The diaphragm. Yeah. So those present different shayla, not just a pruvu, but also a shayla of potential shich mazera levatala, where the pills do not. So anyway, this is the background of the pill. Again, one of the most common forms of birth control. Be'ez Hashem, next week we'll continue to discuss other forms of birth control and the sugya behind them, the halachic permissibility or lack thereof, based on Chazal and based on the poskim.
Siegelman.
Yeah, feel good. Refuah Shalema.
Koyach.
And mazel tov, Rabbi.
Mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov.
Koyach. Naftali Tzvi.